It began, as these stories often do, with an accident. In the spring of 2015, a construction crew working just a few blocks from Vatican City struck something their blueprints said shouldn't be there. A hollow space buried more than 20 meters below ground. At first, they thought it was an old cistern, maybe part of Rome's tangled aqueduct system. But when a worker lowered a camera through the gap, what appeared on the monitor silenced the entire crew. The footage, shaky, grainy, captured on a phone, revealed a perfectly squared tunnel, its walls carved from black volcanic stone, polished smooth as glass. The corners were too precise, the geometry too clean. This wasn't the uneven hand-cut stone typical of Roman or medieval builders. It looked machined. Within hours, the site was cordoned off. By dawn, men in plain suits had arrived, badges unmarked, giving terse orders in Italian and English. The crew was told to halt all digging for safety reasons. But safety had nothing to do with it. A week later, the excavation company's official report vanished from city archives. The foreman, interviewed once by a local newspaper, later retracted his statement. And yet, fragments of the footage had already escaped, uploaded anonymously, copied, mirrored, reposted across the internet. Historians dismissed it as a hoax, but a few noticed something strange. The layout of the tunnel matched descriptions from a 15th century Jesuit map labeled only Subterranea Urbis, the Undercity. For centuries, Rome had been called the Eternal City, but eternity, it seemed, had layers, and someone or something had carved them long before the Caesars ever ruled. The discovery was never publicly confirmed, but those who saw the video still whisper one question. If Rome was built on history, what was history built on? When rumors reached local archaeologists, they demanded access. None was granted. The official explanation cited ground instability and gas accumulation. Unofficially, the area became a restricted zone. Security cameras were installed. Motion sensors flickered red through the night. Yet, within months, someone leaked a series of infrared scans, revealing an entire grid beneath the Vatican's western wall. Corridors intersected like a labyrinth, descending far deeper than any catacomb ever mapped. The geometry didn't match Roman design. It was older and more advanced. A former cultural ministry worker, speaking under anonymity, described massive chambers with no tool marks, no seams, as if the stone had been melted and molded. Another claimed that one chamber emitted a low humming sound, detectable on seismic instruments, but not to the human ear. The Vatican issued a brief denial. No such structures exist beneath the Holy See. But investigators noticed an odd detail. Excavation permits across the district were quietly suspended indefinitely. Something had been found, and someone wanted it forgotten. For centuries, Rome's legends spoke of a deeper city, a mirror Rome beneath the surface, a place whispered in ancient texts as the Inferius Aedes, the lower temple, said to be the home of gods older than Jupiter himself. Until 2015, that was only mythology. Now those myths were aligning with coordinates. And as night fell over the Vatican, a few remaining workers who'd seen the first chamber claimed the air had a strange charge, like static before a storm. One described it simply. You could feel the hum in your bones, like the city below was alive. No one could explain it. No one was allowed to. But every mystery begins the same way, with something discovered that shouldn't exist, and the silence that follows. For centuries, Rome's underworld has been an open secret, a maze of catacombs hand-carved tunnels used by early Christians to bury their dead and hide their faith. Archaeologists have mapped miles of these narrow passageways, ceilings low, air thick with dust and candle soot, frescoes of angels fading into the stone. Every tour guide knows them. Every historian can date them. But below those familiar tunnels, something else exists, a level no one was meant to reach. When scanners probed beneath the known catacombs, they revealed voids that made no sense, vast spaces directly beneath burial corridors, yet carved from a different kind of rock altogether. The catacombs are made of soft tufa limestone, easy to dig through with hand tools. But these lower structures are cut into solid basalt, the kind of volcanic stone so hard it would have taken modern drills to penetrate. And yet, whoever built these chambers didn't drill, they sculpted. Each wall is seamless, the corners perfect right angles, the arches mathematically aligned to a precision within millimeters. The surfaces bear no tool marks, no chisel grooves, no evidence of construction at all, as if the rock had been softened and molded like clay. Carbon dating samples from the upper catacombs show a timeline of the first few centuries after Christ. But the stone beneath them, the deeper layers test far older, at least 10,000 years before Rome's foundation. That shouldn't be possible. Even stranger, those who ventured deep enough reported hearing faint echoes that didn't belong to their own movements. Engineers later measured low-frequency resonance patterns, suggesting the tunnels were built with acoustic design, chambers that amplify sound, not bury it. The catacombs tell the story of Rome's faith. The structures beneath them tell a story we were never meant to read. And somewhere between those layers, between faith and prehistory, lies a silence that refuses to be explained. In archaeology, time is supposed to move downward. The deeper you dig, the older and simpler things become. Pottery turns to stone tools to bones, bones to dust. That's how history behaves everywhere but here. Because in the tunnels beneath Rome, the deeper the descent, the more advanced the craftsmanship becomes. At 10 meters, you find the Christian catacombs, rough, hand-hewn walls. At 20, Etruscan remnants, smoother, but still primitive. At 30, the black basalt corridors, perfect geometry, seamless joins, and strange metallic flecks, fused into the rock as though it had once been molten. Geologists studying the strata made a startling conclusion. These lower chambers were formed before the upper layers of human occupation even existed. In other words, something intelligent shaped the bedrock before the first Romans, perhaps before the first Italics, ever walked above it. One geophysicist compared it to finding microchip fragments beneath dinosaur fossils. The data didn't fit the model, so the model was quietly set aside. Core samples taken in secret show no natural fault or lava tube explanation. The stone was altered by extreme heat, then cooled with unnatural uniformity, a temperature controlled far beyond what human fires could achieve. And there's another anomaly. Magnetometer readings fluctuate wildly in the lowest corridors, as though some residual electromagnetic field still hums through the stone. Instruments fail, compasses spin, lights flicker, a phenomenon engineers can't replicate elsewhere. If the layers of Rome tell the story of civilization, this is a reversal of time itself, progress running backward, vanishing into the earth instead of rising from it. Historians call it an error in dating. Geologists call it impossible, but those who've seen the black basalt tunnels call it something else. A warning that our timeline isn't the only one that ever existed. Long before scanners and satellites, there was a man with a lantern, a notebook, and a vow of silence. His name was Father Alessandro Benedetti, a Jesuit scholar and archivist working for the Vatican Library in the mid-19th century, a time when Rome was still half ruins, half relic. Officially, his task was to catalog ancient burial networks beneath the old basilicas. Unofficially, he was mapping something else entirely. In the dusty corridors beneath St. John Lateran, Benedetti found air currents where there should have been none, whispers of vast hollows stretching far beyond the Christian catacombs. The church had long forbidden further exploration, citing instability and the sanctity of the dead. But Benedetti, a man of science cloaked in faith, ignored the warnings. He began sketching what he called le cavità non registrate, the unrecorded cavities. Over years of quiet work, his notes grew into a sprawling diagram, a map of hollow arteries beneath Rome, annotated with Latin phrases that hinted at both wonder and fear. One entry read, "They breathe still. The stone remembers." The document, later titled Subterranea Romae, was never published. In 1892, after Benedetti's sudden disappearance, the manuscript was locked in the Vatican archives. Only a few grainy reproductions survive, incomplete, faded, missing the central section marked with a black circle. But when those fragments were rediscovered by digital historians in 2018 and overlaid with modern LiDAR scans, something astonishing emerged. The shapes, once thought symbolic, matched the uncharted voids detected beneath Vatican Hill almost perfectly. A 19th century priest had mapped, by candlelight, structures that wouldn't be rediscovered for another 100 years, using technology that didn't yet exist. The church never commented on the coincidence, perhaps because it wasn't coincidence at all, but confirmation. If Father Benedetti truly charted what lies beneath, then the Vatican hasn't merely known about the hidden city, it's been protecting it. When the surviving pages of Subterranea Romae were digitized, historians thought they were little more than devotional sketches, the kind of allegorical cartography Jesuit scholars often made to represent spiritual descent. But then, a data analyst at Sapienza University did something unexpected. She overlaid Benedetti's drawings onto modern LiDAR scans of subterranean Rome. The result was impossible to dismiss. Benedetti's hollow veins, once dismissed as metaphor, aligned with geometric precision to the newly detected tunnels beneath Vatican Hill. Even the curvature of a circular void beneath St. Peter's Basilica matched the blacked-out mark at the center of his map. What the satellites revealed in blue digital topography, Benedetti had already inked in sepia a century before technology could prove it real. The finding leaked briefly through academic channels before being quietly withdrawn. The university cited errors in coordinate calibration. But the analyst who performed the overlay insisted it was accurate within a margin of 2 meters. Shortly after, she resigned, claiming her access to archival material had been revoked. Meanwhile, researchers noticed something else. Vatican Library catalogs from the late 19th century contain a missing entry. The number 1127A, listed as Carte Subterranei Benedetti, appears in one inventory, but vanishes from the next. No explanation, no transfer record, just erased. And yet, references to the same manuscript keep surfacing in letters, footnotes, and the private diaries of church archaeologists. The pattern is consistent. Anyone who looked too closely was redirected, silenced, or reassigned. If the Vatican already knew the labyrinth existed, if Father Benedetti's map was proof, then every excavation since may have been less about discovery and more about containment. Because if his hand-drawn lines from 1850 still match the world's most advanced scans, the question is no longer if the church knew, it's how much more they're still hiding. Every empire tells its story as a beginning, but ancient Rome's story may have begun as an echo. Centuries before the Caesars, before marble forums or iron legions, Roman historians whispered of another race, a people who lived beneath the city long before the first hut was raised on the Palatine Hill. Livy, in his Aberrib Condita, hints at builders who vanished into the ground. Pliny the Elder describes vaults not made by men of our time, carved from unyielding stone, where the air breathes with the warmth of the earth itself. And Virgil, the poet of empire, writes cryptically of those who shaped the underways of Alba, calling them populi subterranes, the people below. For centuries, scholars dismissed these phrases as myth, metaphors for the underworld or poetic imagery for the dead, but what if they weren't metaphors at all? Archaeological strata tell us that human presence in the region began roughly 3,000 years ago. Yet the tunnels unearthed beneath Vatican Hill, those seamless basalt corridors, appear tens of millennia older. If so, then the ancient writers weren't recording mythology. They were remembering. Some fragments of Etruscan legend even mention a city of light beneath the rock, where voices of the first builders could still be heard in the stone. The Roman augurs, priests of omen, forbade digging too deep in certain districts, not for superstition, but for fear of awakening the dwellers of the hollow. And perhaps that's the strangest thread of all. Rome's earliest religion was obsessed with gateways, arches, thresholds, and doors that led between worlds. The god Janus, protector of portals, was the first god of Rome. Maybe the Romans weren't just guarding the gates to their city. Maybe they were guarding the memory of what lay below it. When explorers first descended into the deepest corridors, they expected rough carvings, kind of graffiti or funerary marks common in ancient tunnels. Instead, what they found stopped them cold. Etched into the basalt walls were rows of symbols, impossibly clean, arranged in perfect horizontal alignment. The grooves were no deeper than a fingernail, but each line was cut with surgical precision, as though the stone had been scored by light, not by tools. At first glance, symbols resembled writing, but not any known alphabet. They weren't Latin, nor Etruscan, nor even Greek. Some curved like hieroglyphs, others mirrored the symmetry of runes. A few bore resemblance to cuneiform, yet none matched any historical database. Linguists from multiple universities attempted translation. Computer models compared the patterns to every recorded script in the world. The verdict came back unanimous. No linguistic lineage. The glyphs showed no evolution, no borrowed structure, no progression from primitive forms. They appeared fully formed, as if conceived in a single act of creation, or written by a civilization that existed in complete isolation from all others. One epigrapher described them as geometry pretending to be language. The spacing followed mathematical ratios, the golden mean, Fibonacci intervals, suggesting that meaning here wasn't phonetic, but harmonic. These weren't words meant to be read, they were frequencies meant to be felt. And when sound engineers ran spectral scans of the markings, they discovered something eerie. The symbols seemed to correspond to resonant points within the chamber's acoustic design, as if the writing itself was part of the room's sound structure. No one could explain it. No one still can. It's as if the walls of Rome's oldest chambers aren't just carved with a language, they are the language. And whatever those symbols once said, the stone still remembers how to speak them in 2019, an Italian Ministry of Culture task force was quietly granted permission to conduct a limited access survey beneath the restricted excavation zone near Vatican Hill. Officially, the mission was geological, meant to assess subterranean integrity. Unofficially, it was a descent into the unknown. The team of 6, 3 archaeologists, 2 engineers, and 1 videographer, entered through a maintenance shaft sealed since the late 1980s. The footage that survives is fragmented, dim helmet lights cutting through stale air, boots echoing on smooth basalt floors, radio chatter muffled by static. Then the camera pans right and catches the glint of something unnatural. They had reached what the expedition log would later call the Black Chamber. The space was unlike any other. Its walls were polished to a mirror-like sheen, yet blackened with a residue that shimmered under light, carbonized dust fused into glass. No tools, no torch burns, no ash piles. Whatever scorched the room had done so with impossible uniformity, as though a wave of heat had passed through solid stone and frozen mid-breath. Every surface reflected dimly, distorting the explorers' silhouettes like ghosts. The air was heavy, metallic, charged. Geiger counters ticked faintly, though no radiation source was detected. One of the archaeologists, speaking in the recording, whispers, "It's as if something burned here, but not recently." Carbon analysis taken later would confirm her instinct. The residue was older than Rome itself, dating back at least 11,000 years. When the footage leaked months later, the official response was silence. The chamber, they claimed, didn't exist. Yet the evidence told another story of fire in a place where no human flame should ever have reached. Whatever happened in the Black Chamber wasn't an accident of nature, it was an event. At the very center of the Black Chamber, embedded into the basalt floor, lay a disc of metal, half buried, fused seamlessly with the stone beneath it. Its surface was tarnished but uncorroded, cold to the touch even in the chamber's heat. Roughly 1 meter across, the disc bore concentric rings etched with repeating glyphs, similar to those found on the upper tunnels, but here the lines pulsed with faint magnetism. The engravings were so precise that microscopic scans later revealed nanometer-level depth variations, too exact for any chisel or primitive tool. The team attempted removal. Nothing worked. The metal was bonded to the basalt at a molecular level, as if both had once been molten and then cooled as one. Spectrographic analysis returned no match to known alloys. The sample, a minuscule shaving taken from its edge, contained trace elements of iridium, tungsten, and something unidentifiable, a non-terrestrial isotope combination. When word of the find reached higher authorities, the descent project was abruptly halted. The official reason, risk of contamination. The chamber was resealed and the footage classified. But weeks later, still frames of the object appeared on an encrypted forum. A single image showing the disk's reflective surface catching the camera light, rings spiraling inward like a vortex. Within days, the account that posted it vanished. The Vatican issued one sentence: "No such artifact is known to the Holy See." But those who saw the footage say otherwise, that before the lights cut out, the disc gave a brief shimmer, as if responding to the presence of the crew. Was it a relic, a mechanism, or something left behind from a time before recorded history? Whatever it was, the Black Chamber remained sealed. And deep beneath the heart of Rome, a metallic echo waits, silent, watching, forgotten. After the 2019 descent, the world should have heard about one of the most significant archaeological finds in European history. Instead, it was buried, literally and politically, Within days of the Black Chamber footage leaking, the Vatican's Pontifical Commission for Sacred Archaeology issued an emergency statement. Seismic instability and structural hazards necessitate the immediate sealing of sub-catacomb levels. Construction crews arrived overnight. The shafts that had once led to the lower tunnels were filled with concrete. Guards were stationed at the entrances to the ancient basilica sub-levels. On paper, the justification sounded reasonable. No, Rome's underground is fragile. But insiders knew the pattern. Every time excavations neared a zone marked proibito, the same reasoning appeared: instability. It wasn't the ground they were trying to stabilize, it was the narrative. Scholars who had been granted research permits saw their credentials revoked. The National Institute of Geophysics received orders to reclassify the seismic data as inconclusive. Even the Ministry of Culture quietly withdrew the 2019 descent footage from its digital archives. Behind the scenes, an unspoken pressure settled over the academic world. Professors were reminded of funding dependencies. Journalists were warned of defamation of sacred heritage, and international media, distracted by other crises, let the story fade into myth. One senior archaeologist, who later spoke off record, summarized it best: "You don't argue with the Vatican. You fall silent or you stop being invited back." The Vatican's official position remains unchanged. No anomalous structures exist beneath the Holy See. But the silence itself speaks volumes. Because if there was nothing to hide, why bury a discovery that could redefine history? The deeper the tunnels went, the louder the questions became, until someone decided the only answer was to close the earth itself. Then came the leaks. Anonymous images began circulating across obscure archaeology forums and encrypted message boards. Low resolution, night vision green, stamped with Italian government metadata. They showed something no official excavation had ever reported: frescoes painted on the basalt walls of the lower chambers. Not Christian, not pagan, something older. In the images, delicate pigments shimmer beneath soot, patterns of stars arranged in spirals descending toward the ground, as if the constellations were falling into the earth. One panel showed human figures standing beneath a sky that bent downward, its stars forming what looked like a doorway. Analysts confirmed the paint contained lapis lazuli and hematite, materials once reserved for sacred depictions, not subterranean walls. Yet these murals lay dozens of meters below recorded Roman art, preserved in chambers no one was supposed to know existed. The Vatican immediately dismissed the photos as digital fabrications, but metadata analysts traced the images to an internal server belonging to a restoration contractor once hired by the church. The account disappeared days later, along with the whistleblower. Line theories erupted: claims of ancient star cults, pre-Roman astronomer priests, even contact myths. Most of it was noise, but one image stood apart: a fresco depicting a column of light piercing the ground, flanked by the same concentric glyphs found on the Black Chamber's metal disc. If real, it meant the two discoveries were linked: art and artifact, speaking the same forgotten language. No one has verified the frescoes. The Vatican denies their existence, but among those who've seen the leaked frames, one question refuses to die. What if the fresco isn't symbolic but historical? When scientists are finally allowed to test the remaining open chambers under strict Vatican supervision, they expect silence. Instead, they find music. The walls, though solid basalt, hum faintly when struck, not randomly, but in perfect resonance with 432 hertz. the same tuning frequency used in many of the world's most sacred structures: the Great Pyramid, the Parthenon, the temples of Angkor, even megaliths in Malta. At first, the acoustic team assumes it's coincidence, a natural harmonic, but deeper scans reveal something more disturbing. The chambers are tuned. Each corridor, each vaulted dome resonates to a different overtone, creating a harmonic map like an enormous instrument carved beneath the city. When one section is stimulated by sound, another vibrates in sympathetic response hundreds of meters away. Instruments shouldn't behave like this in stone, yet the readings are undeniable. Sound waves echo longer than physics allows, sustaining in a low, warm tone that seems to move through the listener rather than around them. Audio engineers begin comparing the frequencies to architectural proportions. Ratios of wall length to ceiling height match ancient harmonic scales. The same mathematics encoded in temple design from Egypt to Sumeria. How could a civilization predating Rome, possibly predating written language itself, understand this level of sonic geometry? Some claim the chambers were built to amplify chant or ritual music. Others think they were designed to transmit not voice, but energy. A lost science of vibration, using resonance to alter perception, or perhaps to open something deeper. Every time the team plays a sustained tone, dust drifts from seams that aren't there, instruments twitch, cameras glitch, coincidence perhaps, or proof that the city beneath Rome wasn't just built from stone, it was tuned to something that still listens. Sound wasn't the only anomaly. When infrared cameras were brought into the lower tunnels, the footage revealed light coming from the rock itself. At first, it appeared as faint specks, like dust reflecting the headlamps. But when the lights were turned off, the glow remained, subtle, geometric, alive. The basalt walls shimmered with veins of phosphorescent mineral, running in precise parallel lines along the ceiling and floor, glowing in patterns too deliberate to be natural. Each filament traced an angle that corresponded to the same harmonic ratios found in the chamber acoustics. Scientists collected samples. The minerals didn't match any known luminescent compound. Their chemical makeup suggested engineered crystal lattices, not geological formation. Under magnification, the crystals aligned like circuitry, microscopic channels that emitted a soft amber light, pulsing in slow rhythm as if breathing. Some proposed natural piezoluminescence, pressure-induced glow from tectonic movement. But these chambers were stable, sealed for millennia. Others whispered of ancient bioengineering, symbiotic fungi, or unknown microbes cultivated for illumination. Whatever the cause, one fact remained. Someone made the darkness itself luminous. One engineer described it best. It's as if they designed the underground to see without fire, to live in permanent twilight. The Vatican banned further sampling after reports leaked of biological anomalies. Yet rumors persist of lab results showing low-level electromagnetic emissions in sync with the 402 Hz resonance, light and sound intertwined in one continuous field. It doesn't behave like architecture. It behaves like a machine. And so the question lingers, did these builders discover something we've forgotten, the ability to make stone sing and darkness glow? Or are we merely rediscovering the faint heartbeat of a civilization that never truly died? History remembers Emperor Domitian as a tyrant obsessed with control, a ruler who rebuilt Rome in his own image after fire and rebellion scarred it. But hidden among the imperial decrees and architectural orders lies a phrase that historians have long brushed aside as poetic metaphor: templa ad vacuum edificare, to build temples to the void. For centuries, scholars interpreted it as symbolic, an emperor's philosophical musing on mortality. But buried in Domitian's personal construction records, unearthed in the early 20th century, are blueprints showing vast subterranean foundations with no surface counterpart. They were not temples to gods of the sky, but shrines beneath the earth. Archaeologists now suspect Domitian may have known something about the underground network others had forgotten. His reign saw multiple forbidden dig zones declared beneath key Roman hills, sealed under threat of execution. Ancient letters from the historian Suetonius mention vaults whose breath darkens the torches, and rituals held where light cannot follow. Coincidence, perhaps, yet Domitian's personal emblem in a black sun within a circle appears etched into fragments found near the lower Vatican tunnels. The same pattern is faintly visible on the metal disc recovered from the Black Chamber centuries later. Was it imperial curiosity or imperial knowledge? Some claim Domitian sought to commune with whatever power once inhabited the depths. Others believe he feared it and sealed the passages not to explore, but to contain. Either way, one truth emerges from the dust of empire. Rome's emperors didn't just rule what was above ground. Some may have guarded or worshipped what still lingered below. The void to them wasn't a metaphor, it was a presence. As excavations continued in less restricted areas of Rome, new artifacts began to surface. Fragments of bronze idols, ritual lamps, and stone altars, marked not with names of known gods, but with a single recurring symbol, a circle bisected by a vertical line. The inscription beneath read simply, Ad Caelestum Inferi, to the celestial one below. Scholars at first dismissed it as a minor mystery cult, one of many that flourished in late antiquity. But stratigraphic analysis told another story. The artifacts predated the founding of Rome itself by centuries. This deity, this so-called god of the underlight, existed before Jupiter, before Saturn, before the Roman pantheon even had names. In whispered academic circles, the cult has earned a modern name, the worship of the hollow star. Texts from later Roman mystery schools, the Mithraic, the Gnostic, the Hermetic, echo fragments of its belief system. They speak of a divine force that dwells in stone, a light that burns beneath shadow, and a promise that those who descend will be born anew from the black sun. It's as if every later religion in Rome carried a faint genetic memory of this older worship, distorted, reinterpreted, but never erased. Even the city's own founding myth may hide the trace. Romulus, the first king of Rome, was said to have disappeared in a storm of fire and darkness, his body never found. Some ancient writers claim he was taken below to dwell with the old gods. If true, then Rome's empire was never just a monument to human power. It was built atop something older, a civilization whose echo guided the city's birth and perhaps its destiny. So the question turns, heavy and dangerous, was Rome founded on the ruins of the old world, or for the purpose of guarding it? As evidence continued to mount, the seamless basalt tunnels, the tuned acoustics, the impossible craftsmanship, a question began to surface in hushed tones among researchers. Who built it all? The idea was too dangerous for academia, yet too persistent to die. Some began to whisper of the pre-Roman builders, an unknown civilization that existed long before recorded history, their ruins buried beneath the cities of the modern world. Patterns began to emerge. The chamber alignments beneath Rome shared geometric ratios with megalithic sites thousands of miles away. The dolmens of Malta, the stone circles of Brittany, the pyramids of Egypt, even the acoustic frequency, that haunting 430 Hz, echoed through monuments from the Andes to the Himalayas. Coincidence or connection? Mainstream historians reject the idea. They argue diffusion, imitation, or mere happenstance. But to those who have stood within the basalt corridors and heard the walls hum, coincidence feels inadequate. The so-called forbidden archaeologists, a fringe network of independent researchers, propose a different story. They believe the builders were survivors of a forgotten high civilization destroyed at the end of the last ice age. Some call it Atlantis, others Tartessos, others still the mother culture. These people, they claim, spread across the world carrying fragments of lost knowledge, sacred geometry, harmonic resonance, the manipulation of light and sound. Where they settled, they built in stone that could outlast the ages. Rome, they say, was one of their final strongholds, a seed of continuity buried under millennia of myth. It's the kind of theory historians laugh at in public and read about in private, because every new scan, every new anomaly keeps whispering the same defiant possibility. What if the Romans weren't the first to build Rome, but the last to inherit it? The deeper excavations go, the more the past begins to burn. Literally, geological core samples from beneath the Vatican tunnels reveal a charred stratum of carbonized earth, fused glass, and ash, a layer untouched by human tools, lying far below any known Roman or Etruscan remains. Laboratory tests date the layer to roughly 12,000 years ago, the end of the last ice age, the same cataclysmic era scientists call the Younger Dryas event. Across the world, that same blackened layer appears in Greenland's ice cores and North American riverbeds, beneath the sands of Turkey and Egypt, a global signature of destruction, wildfires, floods, sudden climate collapse. So what happened beneath Rome? One hypothesis, quietly circulated among geologists, suggests a massive plasma discharge or meteor impact, vaporizing stone and leaving behind the glassy residue seen in the black chamber. But others suspect something even stranger. Evidence that the underground city itself was built as a refuge, a sanctuary from the surface world's annihilation. If true, then Rome's underworld isn't a mystery of architecture. It's a monument to survival, a memory of an age when the sky itself turned to fire. Ancient myths echo the event. Plato's Great Flood, Hindu scriptures of the burning of the firmament, and Roman fragments describing the Age of Ash all point to the same era, an extinction that nearly erased humanity. Maybe the builders of the Black Tunnels weren't gods or aliens, but witnesses. They built below because above had become uninhabitable, and as the earth cooled and memory faded, their story became legend, their refuge mistaken for a tomb. The evidence is buried, the data inconclusive. But one truth remains impossible to ignore. Wherever you dig deep enough into history, you find the scars of fire. By late 2022, the investigation had reached its limit. The tunnels below Rome had been sealed, the data restricted, and yet one last discovery forced its way through the silence. During a final seismic scan of the deepest accessible level, just beyond the known reach of the black chamber, sensors detected an anomaly, a hollow space, perfectly geometric, roughly 30 meters across, encased in basalt. The echo profile was too smooth to be natural. Engineers sent in a crawler drone through a narrow fissure in the chamber wall. The footage it returned defied logic. The probe's light revealed a pair of bronze gates, 15 feet high, set into the stone like a vault door. They were not decorative, they were mechanical. Across their surface ran intricate gears and locking mechanisms, fused together by time. No inscription, no symbols, no keyhole, only a single raised relief in the center, a circle surrounded by 8 radiating lines, the same motif seen on the black chamber disc and the subterranean frescoes. Thermal imaging showed the metal was colder than the surrounding rock, as if drawing heat inward. Attempts to measure the cavity beyond produced perfect silence. The sound waves didn't return. What lay behind those doors remains unknown. The structure was declared too unstable to continue, and the fissure was sealed within a week. Every file, every data point vanished into official secrecy, but one witness, a technician who handled the sonar array, later described the echo signature in a single phrase. It wasn't empty space. It was organized. A chamber built with purpose, sealed with intent. They found a door, but no one knows what's behind it. And so it ends, not with revelation, but with a closed gate, deep beneath the oldest city on Earth. The deeper researchers dug, the further the story slipped from history into myth. Was it an ancient refuge, a tomb, a machine, or something older still, the memory of a world erased? Perhaps every civilization builds upward to forget what it once buried. Rome, the eternal city, may have risen not from ruins, but over them. Every empire believes it begins the story. None imagine they're standing on the last page of another. If the tunnels beneath Rome truly predate humanity's known past, then our history isn't linear, it's cyclical. We rise, we burn, we rebuild, and we forget. Those who study the fragments, the maps, the symbols, the music trapped in stone, speak of a strange pattern, a pulse that repeats across millennia. Civilizations emerge as though remembering something half-dreamed. Each time they carve in stone what they no longer understand, and beneath it all, the hum continues, a resonance no one can silence. Maybe that's why the Vatican closed the site, not to hide a secret, but to protect a truth humanity isn't ready to face. The narrator's voice lowers, reflective, uncertain, reverent. Every civilization buries its beginnings. Maybe Rome didn't rise from ruins. Maybe it rose over them. Fade out. Aerial shots of modern Rome glowing at night. The Colosseum lit gold against the black earth. The camera drifts downward through layers of stone and time until only darkness remains. And there, in the unseen depths, a faint light flickers. The last heartbeat of a city the world was never meant to remember.